Yahweh God of Israel, we come before you today, just as Judith did, seeking your guidance and strength. May her story remind us that even in the face of overwhelming fear, our faith can be a powerful weapon. Amen. You know the story of Judith. It's always been one of those that just grabs you by the shoulders and says, pay attention. There's something important here. And today we're diving deep into that story with the help of this Factorate Media video, exploring not just the historical narrative, but the incredible faith that fueled Judith's actions.
What immediately struck me is how this story, which takes place centuries ago, feels incredibly relevant today. We live in a world saturated with images on TV, online, especially social media. It's a constant barrage of curated perfection, often leading to comparisons and a sense of inadequacy. But Judith's story reminds us that true strength isn't about outward appearances. It's about the inner fortitude we build through faith and connection with the divine.
That's such a powerful point. Think about the Israelites in the story. They were facing utter annihilation at the hands of the Assyrian army, led by the fearsome general Holofernes. It would have been easy to give in to despair. Yet Judith rises to the occasion. She's described as this stunningly beautiful woman, but the video really emphasizes that it's her unwavering faith in Yahweh that truly sets her apart. It's almost like her inner strength shines brighter than any physical attribute.
And that internal strength is precisely what informs her strategy. She doesn't try to match the Assyrians' military might. Instead, she chooses a path that from a worldly perspective might seem absurd. She walks right into the enemy camp, relying on her faith and cunning. It's like the verse in Proverbs 28:1, "The wicked flee when no one pursues, but the righteous are bold as a lion."
She's bold, all right. The video describes her entering Holofernes' tent, her ebony skin glowing like polished obsidian. But it's not just her beauty that captivates. It's the aura of confidence she projects, rooted in her deep faith. She doesn't cower. She commands attention.
Her self-assuredness becomes a weapon in itself, disarming her enemies. It's fascinating because we actually see this reflected in modern psychology. There's a study from Harvard Business School that found people who project confidence, even if they're faking it initially, are perceived as more competent and trustworthy. This power posing, as they call it, can actually trigger hormonal changes, increasing testosterone and decreasing cortisol, leading to a genuine increase in confidence. Judith, centuries ago, intuitively understood this power of belief and how it influences perception.
So it's not just a story about faith. It's also a story about the power of the mind, how belief in oneself fueled by faith in Yahweh can actually shape reality.
Exactly. And this brings us to the crucial question of divine intervention. Judith clearly believes she's an instrument of God's will chosen to deliver her people. Her faith isn't just a personal comfort, it's the driving force behind her audacious plan.
Which, let's be honest, is a pretty wild plan. She basically sets out to seduce and then kill Holofernes. It's a move that requires an incredible amount of faith, not just in Yahweh, but also in her own ability to navigate this incredibly dangerous situation.
And this is where the story gets really interesting from a theological perspective. Does Judith's success represent direct divine intervention where God is actively controlling events? Or is it more about Judith's faith empowering her to act with extraordinary courage and wisdom? This debate about human agency versus divine will has been going on for centuries, and Judith's story provides a compelling case study.
It's thought-provoking, for sure. On the one hand, you have this sense that Judith is chosen, destined for this mission, but on the other hand, she's also incredibly resourceful, intelligent, and brave. It's like those two elements are working in tandem.
And that's the beauty of this story. It doesn't offer easy answers. It invites us to wrestle with these big questions about faith, courage, and the role of the divine in our lives.
Okay, so let's walk through how Judith's plan actually unfolds. The video describes the scene in Holofernes' tent, a lavish feast, wine flowing freely. Holofernes is completely captivated by Judith's beauty and seeming submission, lets his guard down. It's a high-stakes game of deception, and you get the sense that Judith is walking a tightrope, relying on her wit and her faith to keep her balanced.
It's important to note that the text doesn't shy away from the violence of her act. Judith takes advantage of Holofernes' drunken state, seizes the moment, and slays him. This isn't a passive, gentle kind of faith, but one that's willing to take decisive action, even if that action is morally complex.
You're right, it's definitely not sugar-coated. It's a stark reminder that Judith's world was a brutal one, and she was operating within the harsh realities of war. But seen through the eyes of the Israelites, her act is one of liberation, of divine retribution against a tyrannical enemy. It's a reminder that sometimes faith demands difficult choices, even choices that might seem morally ambiguous from a modern perspective.
Precisely. And this raises a fascinating question. How do we reconcile the violence depicted in some biblical stories with our modern understanding of a loving and merciful God? It's a question that has challenged theologians for centuries. Some argue that these stories reflect the cultural context of their time, while others maintain that they demonstrate God's willingness to use any means necessary to protect his people.
It's a complex issue, and I don't think there are any easy answers.
Okay.
But it's a conversation worth having, especially in the light of events happening in the world today. We see conflict, violence, and oppression all around us, and it's easy to question where faith fits into all of this.
Absolutely. And Judah's story can offer a different perspective. It reminds us that faith doesn't always mean passive acceptance. Sometimes it means standing up against injustice, even when the odds seem insurmountable.
And the aftermath of Judith's act is pretty stunning. The Assyrian army, suddenly leaderless and demoralized, falls apart. Israel is saved all thanks to this one woman's courage and faith. It's a classic David and Goliath story, but with a profound spiritual dimension. Judith's seemingly powerless individual triumphs over a mighty empire, not through brute force, but through her unwavering belief in Yahweh's guidance.
It's a story that continues to resonate across cultures and time periods. We see echoes of Judith in figures like Joan of Arc, Harriet Tubman, and Malala Yousafzai, individuals who, despite facing seemingly impossible odds, found the strength and courage to challenge the status quo and fight for what they believed in.
It's like they tapped into a source of power beyond themselves, a wellspring of inner strength that enabled them to face down fear and adversity. And that's something we can all relate to on a personal level. We all face challenges, moments of doubt, situations that seem overwhelming. Judah's story reminds us that even in those darkest moments, faith can be a source of immense strength, a guiding light that helps us find our way forward. It makes you wonder where we might find that kind of unwavering faith in our own lives.
That's the real heart of this story, isn't it? It's not just an ancient tale. It's a timeless message about the potential that lies dormant within each of us.
It's like a blueprint for cultivating inner strength, a reminder that even in a world obsessed with external appearances, it's our connection to something greater, our faith in something beyond ourselves that truly empowers us.
And it challenges us to examine our own lives, doesn't it? To ask ourselves, what are we willing to stand up for? What are the values and beliefs that matter so much to us that we'd be willing to risk everything, to face down our fears, to fight for what we know is right?
It's a powerful question, and Judah's story provides a powerful answer. She was undoubtedly afraid facing a powerful enemy like Holofernes, but her faith in Yahweh gave her the courage to overcome that fear, to act with decisiveness and conviction. And that's a lesson we can all carry with us no matter what challenges we're facing.
It reminds me of a quote by Nelson Mandela. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. Judith embodies that sentiment perfectly.
Absolutely. And it's not just about grand gestures of heroism. It's about the everyday courage it takes to live a life of faith, to make choices that align with our values, even when it's difficult, even when we're afraid. It's about finding that inner strength, that unshakable belief that allows us to face down our own personal Holofernes, whatever form they may take.
And sometimes that Holofernes is our own self-doubt, our own insecurities, the voices that tell us we're not good enough, not strong enough, not worthy. Judith's story reminds us that with faith, we can silence those voices, tap into a deeper well of strength, and achieve things we never thought possible.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Judith's extraordinary story, I want to leave you with this thought. Where have you seen faith or inner strength make a difference in your own life? Maybe it was a time you faced a personal crisis, stood up for what you believed in, or simply chose kindness in the face of adversity. How can we cultivate those qualities in ourselves, especially when we're facing challenges? Where can we find that Judith-like courage in our own lives?
And perhaps more importantly, what seemingly impossible things might become possible if we dared to believe, to act with courage and conviction, even when the path ahead seems uncertain. Judith's story is a testament to the power of faith to overcome even the most daunting obstacles. May her story inspire us all to tap into our own inner strength and to believe in the power of the possible.
Amen to that. And may we all find the strength to face our own challenges with the same unwavering spirit as Judith.